Hi guys, my name's Jimmy Peglegs, and I'd like to talk about the Havoc Demon Hunter, which is the DPS side of the class. Now, since beta, this is the one I've been playing the most. I really didn't think I'd enjoy it, but I've been having an absolute blast. If you've been watching a few of the Demon Hunter spec videos and you're not quite sure about what it plays like, the closest I can tell you, the closest I can equate it to really, is imagine playing a combat rogue, not the new outlaw spec, but an old combat rogue, but with the resource generation of a fury warrior and the DPS cooldown of a demonology demon, and that's kind of how it plays in a nutshell. I mean, a lot of the abilities kind of feel a little bit combat roguish. I mean, you've got Blade Dance, which feels a lot like Killing Spree, but on a lot shorter cooldown. And then you've got Chaos Strike, which feels like Sinister Strike, and so on and so forth. It's quite similar. So if you've played those classes before, or those specs, you're probably going to hit the ground running. It is really, really good fun, and it's a very, very mobile class. It's very agile, and it does so much damage. It's incredible. I mean, it is beta. That probably will change, maybe. There's usually, when live comes around, there's usually a couple of classes that are overpowered and a couple of classes that are kind of at the back of the pack, I suppose you would say. But hopefully, if things carry on, this is definitely going to be one of the more powerful ones. Now, it's not all perfect. It does have a few issues. First things first, and this could just be relegated to beta, but the mobility side of it is quite risky, I think, personally. There's been a few times when the server's lagged out, or I've lagged out, and I've got normally a good connection, and I've gone shooting off Dalaran, or off a cliff, or into a pack of mobs that I did not intend to pull. I've not done that in a dungeon just yet, thank God, but it's coming. Now, this could just be relegated to beta. It is stress testing. Connection is a little bit dodgy at times, to say the least, so hopefully it's not. But if you're going to use the mobility of the Demon Hunter in combat, and you can do, I mean, there are talents that you can take, and which increase the damage of Fell Rush and Vengeful Retreat, which are your two mobility abilities. So you can have a really damaging, highly mobile hit and run kind of flanking assassin character, I suppose you would say, and that it does work, but you do need to have a high level of awareness of your surroundings. You will pull packs and you will get killed because you pressed the wrong button, or you weren't too sure of what was behind you. Falling off a cliff isn't really an issue. I mean, you can glide like so really easily, just with a double tap, double jump, and then spacebar again to glide. So you're never going to die by falling damage, unless again you lag out. But yeah, you don't really want to have to walk back after 2 minutes to where you were fighting the mob in the first place because you didn't notice the cliff there. The other side of it is you don't really take too much damage. You're very, very vulnerable or fragile. You do take a lot of damage. It's one of the class's weaknesses, I think. The spec, the tanking side of it is quite sturdy. That's also good fun to play. But you do have talents which give it a kind of an up and down kind of play style, where you're soloing and you can do a lot of damage, but you can't really take it. But when you do take a lot of damage, you can heal yourself back up by using Metamorphosis or I-Beam, if you talent that way. So it can be quite interesting to play. It's a very involved play style, despite the fact that there's only a few buttons to play. I mean, if you look at more of my action bars here, we've got 10 damaging abilities there that I'll use. We've got 3 cooldowns, 2 of which are defensive. They're my F1, F2 and F3 keys. And in the top right hand corner we've got the Q and the W keys, which is the Vengeful Retreat, which is kind of like a the hunter ability. What's it called? I can't remember. It's one where you shoot back, and then you got the fell rush where you do does a lot of damage, and you can move forward. So there's your mobility. All in all, as I said, it's really good fun. I've really enjoyed playing it so far. I hope that it stays like this towards live. Although I think honestly it could do probably a little bit of a damage nerf. I mean, I also love the way the class looks. There's a lot of customization. I love the horns. I even got myself the Eldari tabard for it. If you don't like the glaives, I do, but if you don't like the glaives, you can swap them out for one-handed swords or one-handed axes, transmog. The only reason why I've done that is because it gives me a better way to kind of judge the animations a bit, which I think are really, really good. Like if you watch animations, it's with a glaive, it's sometimes easy to miss. So yeah, all in all, I'd really recommend it. So let's have a look at those talents that it comes with. Sorry, the abilities. I'll look at the talents afterwards. Right. Let's open up the spellbook. Okay, I'm just going to go through them in alphabetical order. It's easier to do. So the first one up is Blade Dance. Now you've just seen me use it. It's a strike all nearby enemies for X amount of physical damage and increases your chance to dodge by 100% for 1 second. It's on a fairly short cooldown. It costs 35 Fury, which is basically like Rage or Maelstrom if you're a Shaman now. No difference. And it just damages all the enemies in a small area. It's kind of like Killing Spree in a way, but without the teleporting around. It's more localized, but still really flashy and good fun to use. Does a lot of damage. Okay, next up is Blur. Now Blur is one of your 2 damage cooldowns. I mean, I suppose you could count Blade Dance as one, because your chance to dodge by 100% for 1 second, but it's hard to target for that. So yeah, Blur increases your chance to dodge by 50% and reduces all damage taken by 35% for 10 seconds. So the way I think of it, it's on a 1 minute cooldown. It's kind of like supercharged evasion that rogues get. Again, combat rogue kind of parallels here, but it's kind of similar. I think it's stronger personally. Okay, Chaos Nova, also on a minute cooldown, costs 30 Fury and unleashes an eruption of fell energy, stunning all nearby enemies for 5 seconds and dealing X amount of chaos damage. This is a it's an AoE stun. That's basically what it is. It's on a minute cooldown, AoE stun. Absolutely fantastic for dungeons where there's a large pack of trash mobs. Some of them are spellcasters and you can't see who they are, or if your consume magic is off cooldown. This is absolutely fantastic to use then. And it does deal a fairly sizable amount of chaos damage. By the way, chaos damage is increased by your mastery, so that would increase if you were going for a high mastery build. Chaos Strike. Now Chaos Strike is your highest damaging single target ability that you'll get straight away. Basically, normally what will happen is you'll generate rage through Demon's Bite, which I'll talk about in a second, and then you'll spend it on Chaos Strike. Now Chaos Strike it hits for an absolute ton and of chaos damage. There's no cooldown of it, but it does cost 40 Fury. However, if you were to critically strike with Chaos Strike, then it does not consume Fury, so a high crit build could theoretically spam it. And it does even more damage when you're in Metamorphosis. It's the ability you want to be using all the time, unless you're facing against a few mobs, in which case Blade Dance and I-Beam. But yeah, this is your go-to damager. Consume Magic. This is pretty much the same as the interrupt that the Shamans get. It's a 20-yard range, 15-second cooldown spell interrupt that locks them out of magic, School of Magic for 3 seconds. However, the added caveat is that if you do interrupt, you generate 50 Fury on a successful interrupt, which is brilliant. Demon's Bite doesn't generate too much Fury, so any extra Fury you can get just means you can spend it a little bit quicker on Chaos Strike, or top out your Fury for when you go into Metamorphosis or I-Beam. It's very, very handy. The next ability is called Darkness. Now this is your second DPS, not DPS, your damage reduction cooldown, let's call it that. It summons darkness around you in an 8-yard radius, cloaking friendly targets and reducing the chance they are hit by spells and melee attacks by 20%, lasts 8 seconds. It's on a 3-minute cooldown. It doesn't cost Fury, so you can activate it whenever. I think this is going to be the reason why you brought to raids, apart from your damage. This is absolutely a fantastic ability to use for fellow melee players on the boss. You know, like especially like against cleave mechanics as well. So, yeah, you're going to want to be using that. Demon's Bite. There's nothing really exciting about Demon's Bite. It's instant. There's no cooldown on it. It basically is just spammable. It just generates 20 to 30 Fury. It's a quick attack. Quickly attacks for X amount of physical damage. It's not. It doesn't do much damage at all, really. Basically, as soon as you've got enough to use a Chaos Strike, you want to be using that instead. I-Beam. Now, I-Beam is the really flashy ability you've probably seen on all the channels. Blasts all enemy in front of you for X amount of chaos damage. It costs 50 Fury and it's channeled. It's a 45-second cooldown, 20-yard range. It basically targets everything in a cone like that, which is really good. So even though the I-Beam only looks like it goes forward, it actually does damage to the sides as well. It does do a lot of damage. So there we go. Using it then. You do want to be using that on cooldown. Basically, as soon as it comes off cooldown, you want to be using it. Okay, Fell Eruption is a talent which I'll talk to you about in a bit. Fell Rush. Fell Rush is your first and your most used ability. You rush forward, incinerating everything in your path for X amount of chaos damage. It's a 10-second charge, and you have 2. So, just show you quickly. I do love this ability, although it can get you into some sticky situations if you're lagging out. So that's basically it. You also use it when you jump as well. It's good for travelling as well. I mean, if you jump off a ledge and you want to glide down somewhere, you can Fell Rush in the middle of that and then just reactivate your glide. So it's very handy. Fell Blade is a talent. I'll talk to you about that in a bit. Fury de Ladari. This is your artifact ability. It does a lot of damage, and it does upgrade over time. You spend points to upgrade it. So it throws the Twin Blades of the Deceiver in a whirlwind of energy, causing X amount of chaos damage over 3 seconds to all nearby enemies. I've also unlocked the trait where at the end of Fury de Ladari it explodes and releases the same amount of damage again. So it basically does double the damage of what you see there. It's brilliant. Watch this guy for a second, he's using all the abilities. Okay, Glide. This reduces your falling speed. You can activate this ability with a jump key while falling. You've seen me do it before. It's really easy to use, no reason not to. Imprison. Imprison is a target for 1 minute, sorry, a demon for 1 minute. Damage will cancel the effect. Limit 1. It's got a 10-second cooldown, so it's usable as and when you need it. You can spec a talent, I think it's in the artifact talent tree, which lets you use it against other targets as well. So it just increases the targets you can use it against, which is useful. And you do take a lot of damage as a Havoc Demon Hunter, so it is something I'd recommend using if you feel like you're going to be overwhelmed. Metamorphosis. Leap into the air and land with explosive force, dealing 35,000 chaos damage to enemies within 8 yards, stunning them for 3 seconds. Upon landing, you are transformed into a hellish demon for 30 seconds, greatly empowering your Chaos Strike and Blade Dance abilities. 40-yard range, 4-minute cooldown. It's a 5-minute cooldown normally, but your artifact traits can bring it down to 3.5 minutes, so just use it quickly. So, as you can see now, these abilities, this Chaos Strike is now Annihilation. Does a lot of damage and critting, and Death Sweep was Blade Dance. So yeah, lots and lots of damage. So you want to be using that on cooldown basically. The one thing I hope they change is that this actually looks nothing like my Demon Hunter. It's got a different haircut. My Demon Hunter isn't using the blindfold at all. So I hope the models change somewhat. in between now and live. Spectral sight. Now this is really cool. It allows you to see enemies and treasures through physical barriers, as well as enemies that are stealthed and invisible. Lasts for 10 seconds. Attacking or taking damage disrupts the sight. It's on a 30-second cooldown. So if I just pop it quickly, you'll see all of the well, all these target dummies are lined up in green, and you can see them through walls as well, like that rat there. You can see it behind. See it behind this building. Now, it's useful to see enemies, although I suspect it's going to be more useful in PvP. But what I use it for mostly at the moment is for finding treasure. Now, treasure is probably the best way to find the consumables which upgrade your artifact power. So you want to be finding them as much as you can, and they're all over the place. They really are. So use it when you can, and see where the nearest treasure is. It'll make life much easier later on. Throw glaive, 30-yard range, 10-second cooldown. You throw a demonic glaive at the target, dealing X amount of physical damage, and the glaive can ricochet to 2 additional enemies in 10 seconds. It's not that powerful, and it's not that useful really, in my opinion. I mean, it's good if you get knocked back, or if you want to pull, but it doesn't do much damage. And I mean, you've got abilities there that you can get into combat just as quickly as you can use as throw glaive, and it won't cost you well, your beam to melee much quicker. So that's probably better DPS, I imagine. But I mean, I suppose if you get knocked back by a boss who's continuously knocking you back and you can't do anything about it, and there are a few bosses like that, then I suppose throw glaive is a good way to do some damage in the interim. Vengeful retreat. It's basically like disengage from hunters. You visually assault nearby enemies and vault away. Assaulted enemies take 15,000 physical damage and have their movement speed reduced by 30%, was it? 70% for 3 seconds, so it's useful. That's basically it. Same as disengage, where you do damage. And you can upgrade it with talents to make it a little bit quicker to generate more fury and so on and so forth. Then we have double jump. You're able to jump again whilst near the apex of your first jump. It's surprisingly useful. You wouldn't think it is. I mean, you can't really jump that high. Double jump doesn't add much height on top of that, but you can get around it quite easily, which is good. It's very, very good. I find that Demon Hunters are absolutely brilliant for kind of cheesing the environment a bit and trying to climb up places where you're not supposed to be able to climb up. So it's good. It's good fun. Okay, your mastery is Demonic Presence. Increases your chaos damage by 21% and your movement speed by 21%. Yeah, it does exactly what it says on the tin. You do have some abilities which do chaos damage, such as your highest damaging ability, Chaos Strike. Well, actually, your highest single target ability is Fail Eruption, but that's on a long cooldown and you got a talent into that. But Chaos Strike is chaos damage, says it on the name. Fury Diary is chaos damage. Eye Beam is chaos damage. Chaos Nova is chaos damage. Is that chaos damage? No, it's physical. Fell Rush is chaos damage, and that's fire damage. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of spells which are increased by your mastery, so it could be worthwhile speccing mastery. I mean, personally, I would have gone crit just because it would make Chaos Strike more spammable. The more crit you've got, the more critical strikes, and they'll reduce the fury cost to 0 if you do crit with them. Okay, Shattered Souls. Killing an enemy sometimes creates a soul fragment that is consumed when you approach it, healing you for 25% of maximum health and generating 30 fury. If the soul fragment comes from a demon, you will deal 20% increased damage for 15 seconds. So this is really useful if you're killing a demon, which, you know, you're a demon hunter, there's lots of demons in Legion. You know, you're going to be getting this 20% increased damage bonus a lot. But you have to make sure you're collecting them, because it's a little bit like the orbs that Brewmaster monks generate, that you got to run over them and collect them. They don't come to you. Also, the health, the healing is really a big bonus, because you don't really have much health and you do take a lot of damage. So any way you can recuperate your health bar is definitely a bonus. Okay, let's take a look at the talents. So at tier 99, the first tier, level 99, the first option is Fell Mastery. Now this increases the critical strike chance of Fell Rush by 100% and grants 25 Fury when Fell Rush damages at least one target. Now this is a fairly strong talent if you prefer a really mobile kind of playstyle. So instead of mixing it up in melee, you want to zoom around, you want to disengage, and you want to jump back in. I tried it, it's quite good fun, but as I've mentioned previously, it does have a kind of element of risk to it. You can easily over rush where you are. You can accidentally pull unintended mobs, so it's interesting and it's good fun, but certainly be a bit cautious of taking talents like this. Okay, second talent is Chaos Cleave. Now this is the one I've taken, simply because Chaos Strike is already pretty much your strongest single target ability. Making it strike an additional target, hits an additional target, is really strong, I think. Especially when you pop Metamorphosis, or after you take the talent Demonic, which I shall explain in a couple of minutes. Okay, the third talent in level 99 is Blind Fury. Now this increases the duration of I-Beam by 50%. In itself this could be quite powerful, especially if you're speccing to take on a lot of AoE mobs. I'd probably take this for that, only because you'll be using this I-Beam more than you'll be using Chaos Strike, I imagine. Okay, at level 100 you get Prepared. Okay, this reduces the cooldown of Vengeful Retreat by 10 seconds and generates 75 Fury over 6 seconds if you damage at least one enemy with Vengeful Retreat. Now, like Fell Mastery above, this promotes a really mobile kind of playstyle where you get into melee, you use Fell Rush to get into melee, and then you would Vengeful Retreat out of it, and then you could Fell Rush back in because you get 2 charges of Fell Rush. So you can do a lot of damage just from your mobility spells, which is a really interesting playstyle. And you could also take this, for example, if you were a bit worried about AoE damage in a raid or dungeon. I know from a couple of dungeons I've done that a few bosses have really wide AoE abilities that you can see, but they're hard to get out of. If you use Vengeful Retreat, it's a good way of getting out of it, and generating rage whilst doing that is potentially fairly fairly a positive thing to do. The second talent is Demon Blades. Now this replaces Demon's Bite, which is your Fury generator, your Prime Fury generator. Your auto attack has a chance to deal additional shadow damage and generate Fury. Now I imagine this would make it more not involved, but it would make the Fury generation more reliable, I suppose. You know when it's coming because the auto attacks obviously every so often, but to me taking Demon's Bite out of it, it doesn't really work for me. It makes it a little bit slower, a little bit more boring, so I don't recommend it. But again, it's an interesting addition. Okay, Demonic Appetite. Now Chaos Strike has a chance to spawn a lesser soul fragment, and consuming any soul fragment grants 30 Fury. Now Chaos Strike is the ability you're probably going to be spamming the most often, unless you've got several mobs, in which case it's going to be I-Beam and Blade Dance and then Chaos Strike after that. But your lesser soul fragments, they heal you, which is handy because you do take a lot of damage as a Havoc Demon Hunter. You are pretty squishy, and the added bonus of 30 Fury, that's basically the same as a Demon's Bite. Well, a 30 Fury Demon's Bite. It's a good way of generating extra Fury, I think, without taking away from the fun of the spec. At level 102 you get the first talent is Fellblade. Now I think this is the best talent on this tier, only because it has a charge mechanic to the ability. Now, we already have a lot of mobility. We have a Fell Rush and we have Vengeful Retreat, so you can get in and out quite quickly. But Fell Blade adds a charge. Now that makes it more reliable, in my opinion. I mean, with these two abilities, it's easy to overshoot or to accidentally pull another pack of mobs. It can all go so wrong, especially if you experience a bit of lag or you have a bad connection. You can go a lot further than you think. So Fell Blade, it adds a reliable charge where you know exactly where you're going to be going, and it does quite a lot of damage as well. It generates 30 Fury, and Demon's Bite can reset the cooldown on Fell Blade, so you can use it quite often. Let's just see if it makes it work. Yeah, straight away, first one. There we go. Okay, the second talent of the 102 talent tier is First Blood. Now this reduces the fury cost of Blade Dance by 20 and increases its damage to quite a lot against the first target struck, so it significantly boosts it. Yeah, so it basically hits for double against the first target you strike, your targeted target. I've not taken this only because I don't use Blaze. I'd use this in an instance. I probably would, yeah. I'd use this in an instance. This is the when you come up against a lot of trash mobs. This is just a nice little boost to damage. Well, maybe if you don't need the charge and you're not too worried about pulling extra mobs with your Fell Rush, the First Blood would be quite useful. Okay, then we have Bloodlet. Now, Throw Glaive causes targets to bleed for 190% of damage inflicted over 10 seconds. If this damage is reapplied, any remaining damage will be added to the new Bloodlet. I don't think this talent's that useful. I mean, Throw Glaive doesn't really do much damage in the first place, and you have the abilities to get in and out of combat really quickly. I mean, the only time you'd ever really use something like this is if maybe someone's got a lot of knockback and you wanted to apply the damage whilst you couldn't get close. Or if you were applying a kind of hit and run style of combat, which I think you can do with this talent tree, which we'll get into in a bit. But yeah, I won't take this unless you were doing something quite out there with the spec. Okay, at level 104 you unlock Never Walk, which is the first talent in this tier. Now this replaces Blur. You slip into Never, increasing movement speed by 100% and becoming immune to damage, but unable to attack. Lasts 5 seconds. So this is basically, it replaces Blur and adds an extra bit of half a minute cooldown on it. Now, Blur acts like a kind of souped up evasion. You know, rogues get evasion, this acts like a better version of that, to me, anyway. So it's already pretty strong. Plus, with the mobility you've got, I mean, you can get out of combat really quickly. So I don't think this is amazingly powerful. Maybe on raids where there's a mechanic which is unavoidable raid damage, this would be a good way to negate it. Also with the movement speed, it'd be a good way to get out of things if you find yourself in them, but for normal play I don't think that's the best one to take. Next up we have Desperate Instincts. Now this also replaces Blur. You automatically trigger Blur when you fall below 35% health. This effect can occur every 30 seconds. So it's quite an interesting change. Basically it potentially halves the cooldown on Blur to 30 seconds. But you can't, and you can't use it anymore, you can't trigger it manually. It's automatically done when you hit 35%. Now, I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. I'd like to be able to use Blur when there's a lot of mobs attacking me, so maybe I'd say 100% health. If I'm suddenly attract a packer, then I might want to use Blur straight away and try and take them down right there and then, without having to rely on getting too low. But it could be quite a powerful talent. We also have Soul Rending. Now this is the, to me, this is the best talent to take. Because it turns your Metamorphosis, which is your prime DPS cooldown, which is your only DPS cooldown unless you spec into him in your talent tree. It turns it into a defensive cooldown as well, which is brilliant. as I said before, the Demon Hunter is quite squishy. Well, the Havoc spec is. But if you take this Metamorphosis, you basically become indestructible whilst you're doing damage for 30 seconds. Now, the longer the fights go on, say against like bosses, rares, mobs with high health, you become more and more disadvantaged because you can't really negate damage too well. You take a lot of damage. So this is a great way of topping yourself back up. So if you get, say, something like 10% health, pop Metamorphosis, and bam. By the end of I-Beam and say like another Chaos Strike, you're probably going to be at 100% health again. And yeah, it's just great for survivability. Which is a bit of a weak point. Survivability is a bit of a weak point of the Havoc spec, so this negates it somewhat, which is quite strong. Okay, at 106 you get Momentum. Now, Fell Rush and Vengeful Retreat increase your damage done by 20% for 4 seconds. So this is quite an interesting talent, I think. Fell Rush and Vengeful Retreat, they're great at getting into an hour combat, but so if that was a mob and I had to Vengeful Retreat, it would take me a couple of seconds to get back, or I could use Fell Rush. You've got to be really accurate with what you're doing. You've got to know where things, where you're going to end up, and you've got to hope the connection is not laggy and the mob doesn't move. I mean, it does sound like potentially a very powerful talent, but it only lasts for 4 seconds. Now, the way I see it is that this could potentially tie into a hit and run spec. Like with Fell Mastery, and you've got Prepared and Bloodlet, you could potentially drop out of combat like this, and then use your Throwglaive ability, sorry, not Throwglaive, Throwglaive ability to do damage from range, and you would get the 20%. I mean, Throwglaive doesn't do much damage anyway, so I can't really see the point, but you could potentially get out of combat quite quickly and do lots of damage from range. Like I said, hit and run spec. I don't think it would work, but it's something to try. Okay, the next talent under 106 is Fell Eruption. Now, if you take this will be your strongest single target ability, but it is on a 35-second cooldown. It does cost 10 Fury, and it is a 20-yard range. Now, it impales a target for X amount of chaos damage and stuns them for 2 seconds. It inflicts an additional 100% damage against targets permanently immune to stuns. So, it's a great target. It's a great ability to take against bosses, against certain rares, quest mobs that you can't be stunned. This is why I'm running with it. I mean, if you're doing instances, it does a lot of damage. I mean, it is on a long cooldown, so it does kind of even out over time, but against non-elite mobs, it can take off a massive chunk of health and shorten the fight. And shortening the fight is definitely something you want to do when you're a Demon Hunter. Okay, the last talent on 160 is Nemesis. Now, this one sounds quite interesting to me. It's a DPS cooldown, a 2-minute cooldown. Increases the damage you inflict against a target by 15% for 1 minute. When the target is slain, you will inflict 15% additional damage against all creature types matching the original target: humanoid, dragonkin, blood demon, which you'll fight a lot of, for the remaining duration. So yeah, so for 1 minute, basically you'll get a 15% damage increase against the mob that you pick, and if you kill it, any other mobs of that type, so demon and so on and so forth. It lasts for 1 minute and it's got a 2-minute cooldown, so basically imagine if you're using it on cooldown all the time, it's like a 7.5% buff to your damage, permanent buff to your damage kind of thing, which is handy. I suppose it sounds quite strong now that I think about it. I might give this a try. Okay, at level 108 you unlock the this tier. So the first talent is Master the Glaive. Now, Throwglaive now has 2 charges and snares all enemies hit by 50% for 6 seconds. Now, going back to that kind of hit and run spec that you could probably do, this could be tie quite nicely into it, I guess. It's certainly interesting. Okay, Unleash Power. Removes the fury cost of Chaos Nova and reduces its cooldown by 33%. Okay, so Chaos Nova, it has 30 Fury, so it'd be 0 Fury if you took this talent, and it would be a 40-second cooldown. I suppose that could be quite interesting, quite useful if you're having difficulty in an instance maybe, and there's lots of trash mobs which are putting out a high amount of damage. Being able to use Chaos Nova more often, you know, it would be useful undeniably. But I think Demon Reborn is probably the best talent on this tier by far. It's probably one of the best talents in the actual tree, I think. All your cooldowns are reset when you invoke Metamorphosis. So let's just have a look at this, shall we? So, build up some Fury. Okay, so start using things with a long cooldown. Okay, so everything's now on cooldown, but if I pop Metamorphosis, everything's back off cooldown, which is quite handy, and put out a lot of damage. Yeah, a lot of damage. This is why I think this is one of the stronger talents in the tree. When you use Metamorphosis is just the most powerful part of the spec, really. It's what you want to be hitting as soon as you can, really, assuming the mobs are going to stay alive for long enough. Yeah, definitely take Demon Reborn in its current incarnation. Okay, so at 110 we have Chaos Blades. Now this is a 2-minute cooldown, instant cast spell. Increases all damage done by 21% based on mastery for 12 seconds. Whilst active, your auto attack deals 200% increased damage and increases chaos damage. Sorry, and causes chaos damage. So I think this would be a brilliant cooldown to use when you're getting into Metamorphosis. I mean, because it buffs Chaos Strike, yeah, and increasing damage to something that already does so much damage, and increasing your auto attack damage. You know, maybe this was also tying with Demon Blades as well, if you were to use that with the auto attack. Deals additional shell damage and generates fury. Could be quite an interesting combo. But it sounds like a definitely interesting damage cooldown. Okay, Fell Barrage. At your command, unleash Fell, inflicting 70,000, well 100 level 10, 70,000 chaos damage to your target and nearby enemies for each charge. Maximum 5 charges. Your damaging attacks have a chance to generate a charge. So this sounds like a really good AoE ability. Again, it would be something that I'd probably spec into if I was expecting a lot of AoE packs in a raid or a dungeon. Yeah, it sounds like a good ability to me. But the one I've taken is Demonic. I-Beam causes you to enter demon form for 5 seconds after it finishes dealing damage. Now, that in itself doesn't sound particularly overwhelming compared to Chaos Blades and Fell Barrage, but if you're soloing, which is what I've been doing mostly up to now, it's an absolutely brilliant ability. And the reason for that is this. The Demon Hunter, Havoc spec, is quite squishy, you take a lot of damage. As the fight goes on, it gets harder and harder to stay alive, your DPS, your damage cooldowns don't last for too long. Sorry, your damage reduction cooldowns don't last for too long. But the best way of staying alive as a Demon Hunter, as a Havoc spec Demon Hunter, is speccing into Soul Rending, so you're getting 100% leech or Metamorphosis is active, so that when you use I-Beam, so spec up, if I was on low health right now, I would use I-Beam, and look at the amount of health you gain back. It's obviously it changes in the world, but I mean, you can see that it's a sizable portion of health that you get with when you die with the I-Beam Metamorphosis. It does work. So if you're facing a rare mob or a boss, it's a great way to survive. It takes stress off your healers. You know, it pretty much addresses the weak point of the spec, I think, in that you don't get much healing and there isn't much damage reduction. So yeah, definitely a very strong ability, I think, personally, in terms of survival anyway, and questing and soloing stuff. Okay, and that's the talents as they currently stand. Now, they can change. I mean, this talent tree in the last couple of weeks has already undergone a couple of reiterations. Things have changed around. hope if it does, it does. Again, I mean, I'll produce another video. But if it stays like this, then this is what you're going to be looking at as a Demon Hunter, and it's a good talent tree, I think. Some interesting abilities. You've got the potential to change it around a bit. Maybe try a different kind of play style, like a bit of hit and run. Because at the moment you are pretty much like a combat rogue in the way you play, like the old combat rogue, mixed with a little bit of Fury Warrior in terms of resource generation, and old Demonology Warlock in terms of metamorphosis. So it's an interesting mix, but healing isn't one of your strong points. So hopefully it stays as it is. But if things are prone to change, it is beta after all, and there's another couple of months to go.